So, yesterday we talked about balance and how it is important for us to understand the balance. Um, the summary that I put upon on the screen right now shows you that balance is nature's way. Now, we need to understand this. If we are talking about nature, it is all about balancing. And why does it want to balance? It wants to balance for allowing millions and millions of years of evolution to happen, and it keeps on completely just self supreme balancing mechanism that the earth is. I mean, the elements are there. Then we are taught about the elements that they are non-living things. But when we look at the end of the day, they are so much in balance with each other. The sun rises at the right time before the temperature goes too low, and then it sets before it gets too high. The moon also interacts with the water systems. We'll talk about it also. Since we are going to talk about water today, we're also going to talk about the moon. So, and how its gravitational pull affects plants, and how it affects gardening also. So the whole thing is a balancing act. We need to understand that. And the imbalance happens at the individual level, and most of the time it's when we are disconnecting with the fact or disconnecting with the truth, that is, we are coexisting. I mean, when Corona happened, we all realized how small just a single strand, RNA virus can spread so uh, dramatically, and how it's spreading through the air. So it shows how we are coexisting on one planet, and there's no such thing as a wall you can build and stop some things from entering in your country or in your town or in your home. So we are coexisting. We need to understand that truth. And when we don't understand the truth, the problems start occurring. So the imbalance at the individual level happens when we are away from nature's coexistence law. This law applies to almost everything that exists. Now, when I say that, I mean if your blood has an excess supply of any nutrient, I'll give you an example. If your body system has an excess supply of proteins, you will emit that kind of aroma from your body that will attract insects, mosquitoes especially. So you will see that some individual is not getting any mosquitoes bitten, and although there are so many mosquitoes around, but no mosquito is going to near that person. But when the person has an excess of, let's say he is eating a lot of protein, for example, and the mosquito eggs need to develop, they need protein for that. So the individual who has a high amount of protein in his body system, those individuals will get bitten by the mosquito. So again, now if you take it to the holistic point of view, when you zoom out a little bit, what is the mosquito doing? It's trying to balance the system out. इसके पास ज्यादा है, उसके पास से निकाल दो, इसके पास कम है, उसको छोड़ दो. That's what it does. That's what plants do also. When they need water, the presence of water is required by the plants to take in. And not even water, I would say moisture. When we say we want to water the plants, be very careful when you say the word water. The plants actually just need moisture. If you water it too much, the plants will actually die of suffocation. The roots will start decaying, and the roots will actually get submerged in water, and they'll start drowning in the water. So the amount of roots that are there in the ground, they're looking for nutrients, and at the same time they need the air. As we talked yesterday, the biological entities like microorganisms like the rhizobium bacteria, the blue green algae, they are creating the nitrites and the nitrates there in the ground, and those are uptaken by the roots. So the bacteria to survive also, there's need for the air to go down. And who makes these small tunnels? So the earthworms come and play here. So everybody is taking their part. Everybody is doing their part, and that's where the gardening thing is happening also. So the third, the fourth line I'm going to read here: balance is in what you love, and being self-satisfied, and spending less in self-grooming. Now, this sentence I've written here particularly since we are talking about gardening, but at the spiritual level, if you look at an individual who is working, and he's working very hard, and it's something that he doesn't really enjoy, but he's getting a lot of money. You know what happens? He will be also spending an equal amount of money or equal fraction of money to get satisfaction. For example, if I'm earning 50,000 rupees, okay, or maybe say 100,000 rupees a month, and I'm not liking the job at all, but the money is good, right? So 100,000 I'm getting at the end of the month. What I will do, I will spend 20 to 30,000 on gadgets or gimmickry or something that makes me feel good, to get satisfaction out of that money. मैंने इतना सारा मेहनत किया है, तो अब मेरे तो ऊपर खर्च करूंगा, you know compared to the person who is loving his job or her job, and then they're doing something out of satisfaction, but that satisfaction is already there when they're doing the work, so they don't need excess money. So at the individual level, when you look at gardening also, we need to understand that plants are there surviving on things that are already there. And when we put chemical fertilizers, it's like a greedy person. Mostly people who understand gardening and those who have joined this group are actually good gardeners themselves already. Those who are doing commercial farming, those who are exploiting the resources, they will never join this kind of groups, because to them access is the right word, greed is the right word. So they will supply the chemical fertilizers just to get the produce out there, and once the land is exhausted, move to another land. So that kind of mindset is also there, and this proves that there is no satisfaction. Somewhere down the line, they're just doing it for money. And when you talk about gardening, gardening is about a person who's self-satisfied already, and so the giving factor is inherently there when we are gardening. So this point I wanted to raise is because when we are satisfied within, when we are doing something that we love, when we are gardening, we are already giving in a way, and we'll understand the laws quite easily. And we might be following those laws already, but we just need to brush up the things. And I think what my task is, as the last written sentence is written there, a gardener is an individual that facilitates. Who can give sunlight? We cannot definitely give sunlight. Who can give rainwater? We can definitely not give rainwater, but we facilitate, and we facilitate to the plants, and that's what's actually needed and for gardening. And as we make ourselves smaller and smaller and confine ourselves into the reality that we are coexisting with the plants, then you get bigger and bigger and bigger. There's a very good small uh, story that a saint told me, that the vastness of a tree, even how big it is actually narrowed down to a seed. So if you are an individual who can be the smallest of entity, then you are eligible to be the largest of entity. So the smallness of you depicts the grandness of you. So that is how the nature is also. And the whole tree is just, reduced to a seed, and at the same time the seed is the big tree. So we need to understand that. Yeah. I'm sure other peoples will join, and we'll just go ahead now with this today's topic. Today's topic is linked with the continuation of yesterday. We talked about nitrogen and how it's needed, and air being part of it. 70% of it is nitrogen out there, but then we need the bacteria's converting it to nitrates and nitrites. So this is the chemical formula I usually see in your screen. Uh, will not go into detail as much, but you can see there our earthworm is moving around, and the plant is growing a little bit. Can you see that? Let me just switch on the laser pointer here. This plant is growing just as the earthworm just moved there and moved there, and the plant started to grow. Now, this representation means the earthworms is making small tunnels and allowing the air to flow in. So I just wanted to continue with yesterday's depiction of how the nitrates are taken in. If this was not happening, if your soil was not porous, if your soil was not granule, grain like something's like if you see a bag of wheat, a lot of grains, right? There's have so many spaces in between them. So this is what we'll also cover, how the soil type affects. This will just show you a picture of what actually we'll cover today. This type of sand, now this type of sand has a lot of spaces in between. As you can see, the white spots there has a lot of space in between. So this kind of soil is needed, but at the same time, if it is too porous, the water will just flow down. So we need something like this, equal amount of fine granules also. So I'll get back to the slides. All these slides are interconnected, so I'll have to go to and fro sometimes. Uh, when the sand is granule, and the granularity of the soil allows these organisms to move around. If the sand is too clayey, and it will not be too porous for the microorganisms to move around, like earthworms especially. So the soil becomes compacted, and the roots also cannot go deep in. So we need soil that is soft, and for the air to go in. So the topic is still the air. For the air to flow in, you need a granular type of soil, which is actually basically called the loamy soil. We'll get to that. So carbon dioxide combined with water and in sunlight, it creates now C6H12 and O6. Now this is called the formula of glucose. So this is glucose, and with glucose, the plant builds its leaves and fruits, and then it exits oxygen as a byproduct. So this is just a simple chemical formula for photosynthesis. I'm sure you are aware of it. We'll move to the next slide. What does the uh, chemicals, does it need chemicals? What does the plant need? It actually needs compost in the form of dead decaying material. Now, I will just quickly ask my assistant to just follow me downstairs. Since the question was about water, I wanted to show how it affects the how the water is affected, and how we are supposed to water it. So let me just go downstairs, and I'll join you with another camera.
So I'll just show you what small pot of Fudinhara, as we say, the leaves that are there, the greenery it is there, and I'm trying to show you the volume of the soil here. So when you look at this soil, you see the amount of soil that is there, and this is in the winters that I'm growing right now. So these plants get just maybe 2 hours of sunlight, and this is the type of greenery that is there happening. Now, if you look at the soil very carefully, it's almost granule. There is no compact soil as such. There's a couple of leaves there, but if you look at it, there's a lot of activity there. If I dig into this, you can just see how granule it is, almost like tea or coffee, the leftover of tea or coffee that we have. And if you look at this, now this is the other pot there. This pot is smaller in size. Can you see it has less number of leaves, less number of twigs that actually sprouted? I mean, it was filled with the whole thing was filled up with the twigs, but only couple of them sprouted, and those are the existing ones. The others, they just died out like this. They were just uh, the winter just took away the life out of them. So basically, they just died out. Even this one is dead. See, so I just wanted to show you the more amount of volume there is. So there is less volume of soil here. So individually there is less amount of heat activity happening here as compared to here. There's a lot of volume here. It's a small plot, as in very, very small. You can see, to compare it with my hand, is just about 1 feet in diameter, and this kind of plot has having a lot of activity going on. This is the biggest size I think we got here, the biggest greenest leaves, and this is getting about 2 to 3 hours of sunlight. That's it, because the sun, we have the wall here of the house next door, so the sun just hides behind that. So 3 hours of sunlight, and this is the kind of produce you get. And another pot I was making here, since we are going to do this, I thought of doing it a little bit practical today, compared to a lot of theory that happened yesterday. So if you look at this, this is the normal soil that we have, very compact. But if you go below it, if I can just dig in, can you see all the decaying matter there? Okay, this is where we get to the gold part. Do you see this? This is the humus. This is the greenery. These are the tea leaves that we collect. And so the tea leaves are buried deep within with it. And if you can see inside, the insects are moving around, the ants are moving around. They've just found that their house has been, I think, bombarded by some hands. So, so a lot of small organisms are down there working inside. So the granule part of it and the humus part of it and the dead leaves are down there. So what happens is when we are growing the plants, the roots get to them later on. So it's a very good idea to keep the compost at the bottom part, at least the compost that is giving the nutrients. And then you cover the soil, the top layer of soil, with ordinary soil that is down there. So this is actually not good. If it is still decomposing, it will generate heat. But if it is a winter, this is a really good idea. So what this does is when this is decomposing, it generates heat. And the microorganisms are eating on it and they're munching on it and it's generating methane gas. And when that methane gas rises up, it keeps on heating this whole pot of soil. So there is green waste down there. You can see leaves are there also down there. And then I just cover it up with soil. So now we have the microorganisms there having a lot of abundant amount of food to eat on, and a lot of gas and heat is generated. And then when I plant something on this, you will actually see that it will get a good flowering like this, or at least a good output like this. And once again, what I'm trying to depict is, don't make it too small. If you make it too small, there'll be less activity there. If you make it enough size, you will get a good amount of heat happening. The same type of compost was used in both of the pots. You can just show this, both of the pots, but this has more activity inside it just because of the sheer volume of it. So that's a very important part I wanted to show. Another point I wanted to make is the tulsi tree here. So this is the tulsi plant, and this tulsi plant was actually being watered every 2 to 3 days, and the leaves, you can see, are very green right now. There's no leaf falling down actually. And then after I started putting compost, so if I go inside into the roots, you can see I've put some. I'll just dig in a little bit, show you what is there. Again, granules and tea leaves and all this kind of waste is there. So when I use this, it actually activates the microorganisms there, and the microorganisms start to generate heat. And now I'm watering this tulsi like every week. Even if I forget sometimes, nothing happens. But before, I used to have this. This is actually a plant from the neighbor. He just was living in our house after when it was rented, and we used to give it water every second or third day. But after I got the plant mixed with compost, as in on the top layer, I started putting in compost. I realized that I don't need to water it as much, and the simple reason is the microorganisms are feeding themselves, are drinking on the water, are retaining the water. So the bacteria and the viruses that are happening there, they're just filling themselves up with water. And then when I forget to water it, maybe on the third day, I just realized, oh my God, a week has passed and the leaves are still green. How is that possible? So this happens when the microorganisms are removing water from their own bodies and feeding to the roots. So this is how the symbiosis happens. If you just get to understand this simple balance, if you use chemical fertilizer, you not only kill these microorganisms, but you also have to keep on watering and feeding the fertilizer again, and then water it again, and then feeding the fertilizers again. And those fertilizers are not necessarily the fertilizer that the plant may need. But if you leave it to the microorganisms, they will generate a balancing act of all the nutrients that are required. And hence, you can see now it's flourishing. We watered this today in the morning, and this is like about 5 days again, still looking green. We just watered it today morning. So this is the kind of point I wanted to make. We don't need to exactly water it if you are having a lot of compost in it. And if you see that when you need to water is when the leaves start to slump down, just when you see the leaves are slowly just downing themselves, the whole plant will start to show that it's needing water, and that's when you need to water the plant, if you have the microorganisms. Otherwise the microorganisms will take care of that. You don't need to worry about it if you're using composting and simple things like tea leaves to do your work. So I'll just get back to my class. I just wanted to show you a vine that is going. So this is one of the vines, traveling up, going up. It's actually just traveling. I can't even zoom, I think. So it's traveling to the second story now. So it all starts from here. The roots are the ones that creates the fruits. This is a simple plot of land that was broken for the earthing of the solar panels. So we just put a plant there, and now it's going like crazy. If I show you the root system, there's nothing there but just good composting happening there. So if I go again closer, this is where it all starts. This plant here, it all starts here. As you can see, there's a lot of dead and decomposing stuff here. A lot of more material to chew on. It's a lot of things happening there. A lot of activity happening there. You can see the ants there, the soldier ant there, doing his work. So this is the kind of things. This is the kind of granularity I'm saying. The soil has to be granular. The soil does not have to be necessarily have water, but it has to be granular like this. Okay. So I'll get back to the class again. Just give me a couple of seconds.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed the live version of what I was talking about until now. I'm encouraging everyone to also do the same. Have a small recording of your plots and what kind of trees or plants that you're growing. Let me just stop this so that you can see my video. And when I say granularity of the soil, I just mean there's basically dead leaves. So that is the easiest way to say it. The leaves are made from matter that is organic, and if you just leave it to decompose there near the plant root systems, that is the best sort of fertilizer. And the microorganisms will eat that up and just make it into humus. Humus is basically dead and decomposing stuff. So mostly it's plant matter, and that's the best way that you can make your soil fertile. So we'll get back to the presentation.
Hello.
Yes,
Janak, while we were showing the plant, you said there are a lot of ants. You can see there.
right.
So if I see the ants in my plants, what does that
Uh-huh.
mean? I need to, you know, they take care of the plant and get rid
Okay.
of the ants, or leave them like that.
Okay. I'll answer that with another question. What do you think came first, the ant or the human being?
The ant.
The ant came first. So somehow down the line, even speaking like morally speaking, they must be knowing better because that's they survived till now, something like that we can say,
Right. Right.
right? So I'll just show you a small picture. I'm trying to look for it. Uh, just maybe just give me a second because this is a new question and it's very important because the ants are really part of coexistence. And how do we know that? Okay, I'll just explain it to you. What I'll do is I'll just explain it to you. When we are talking about the ants, um, they dig a hole so deep to the height of 7 feet, 7 to 8 feet. That's the height of a human being, more than a human being. And they have small compartments, compartments where they store the food, compartments where they store the leaves. They also use the heat of the leaves and decomposing microorganisms to generate heat inside their home. Like they don't burn firewood, right? How are they getting this heat to survive in this cold? So they have compartments where they're storing the leaves, they're storing the food, they're storing the larvae of the young babies there, you know. And I wish, let me just try again, that is really important. And home, I'm just Googling it up right now, trying to find a perfect picture so that I can show it to you. Uh, Nothing comes up randomly, but something like this. Let me just show you quick. Are everybody able to see this? So what is happening is you can see the ant here, right? And the ant, let me just zoom a little bit if it's possible. Okay, this is a better one. Yeah. So the ant hill is there, right? Can you see this? Can you see my arrow? Yes. So you see the ant is coming from this hole here, and it's created all these chambers there. There's some food there. There's some leaves there, and then there's a hill out there. So these ants are actually promoting and making pathways for the roots to go in. So if it's a plant that is actually growing and you think that this is a lot of ants is happening there, that's because it's creating a home for itself during the winters. So if it is an excess amount of nutrients are there, it will create a home there. But if it is a normal place, like for example, if you're in a pot and you have a lot of nutrients, so the ants will come there and try to take refuge in that place. So the ants are trying to normalize the place. They're trying to find a way for themselves to survive also, and as well as not kill your plant. But if there's a lot of nutrients there, a lot of microorganisms there, and a lot of decaying material there, then they will come there and they'll make a home there, and then they'll maybe start eating on the roots also. But we need to understand that they are there to balance the whole system out. They will not eat on something that is alive. Similar thing with the termites. Have you ever seen a termite go after a live tree? There are so many trees around us. Why don't the termites attack the trees? But they just attack the dead, the decaying, or the something that see that it's going to die out anyways. You know, so that's when they attack. That's what they attack basically. And we need to understand this. The balancing act that the nature has fixed for ourselves, for everyone actually, is that if you're surviving and you're fit to survive, then you will be left alone. But if you are dying and if you're withering and all these things are happening, then the disease will come on top of you and you kill you off. And the insects will come on top of you and they kill the plant off. So the whole thing is about providing the nutrients to the soil, or at least maintaining a constant supply of nutrients to the soil so that the plant can stay healthy. It's all in the root, how the roots are preserved and how the roots get the nutrition. It's not about foliage and all these things there. Just concentrate on the soil, the quality of the soil. And we are not applying any sort of fertilizer in our gardens, and we're just removing the topsoil a little bit on the side, and down there's so many so much more activity happening. We just take a couple of those handfuls of those soil and put it into other pots, and they start producing a lot of fruits and vegetables also. So it's like a mini factory that we've developed there. We just keep on adding leaves there, composting the leaves there, and we mix that with the normal soil. That is, you can get that normal soil anywhere out there, just brown color soil, which is actually dead soil, in other words. It's like dust, as we saw in the beginning of the video. The soil is turning into dust. So when you mix that dust with your compost and with your humus filled soil, it creates and activates that soil. And the ants are definitely part of that whole process to continue and to complete the cycle. So ants are really good things. If you really want to understand how to control them, you need to understand that they are also helping the plant. They're not killing the plant necessarily. They're just making their ways through and they'll keep the plant warm. So especially in the winter times, if you think the ants are doing something to your plant, you actually appreciate that. That's their way of making themselves survive, and they'll make the plant survive. Because the winter is harsh some places. So that's a good thing also, actually.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Actually, I had a terrace garden,
Okay.
and I was making my own compost with my, kitchen waste.
Great.
So I think you're right. Sometimes there
Yeah.
is a lot of compost in a
Right.
pot, and
Right.
there I find the ants. Now we have
Exactly.
shifted to Ramnagar, and that's the land my son is going to do the farming and all.
Okay.
And I know he knows it all.
Right.
I just want to attend this workshop because I want to be on the same page, as he is. I want to know
Great.
what
Great.
he
Great.
knows.
नहीं नहीं you will definitely see if he knows something, he's actually not knowing much. He knows balancing it. So
Yeah,
when
yeah,
you
that's
when you say that you want to know something, is just about unlearning something
right.
that you've learned. You heard somewhere that you need to water it, you need to put fertilizer, you need to put this, that. That's actually just a
Mm.
unlearning. Yeah.
Yeah, he
So
talks about natural farming only, and I was telling him
uh,
that I'm attending this workshop, and I yesterday I
great,
discussed a few points, and he was very happy. Says,
great,
yeah,
great.
yeah,
It's
go
good to
ahead.
know. So I actually am happy to hear that, as that means I'm also getting validation for that in some way, indirectly. That's good. Thank you. Uh, So I'll continue with my topic here. Let me just launch up this presentation. This is what a kind of interactivity I was talking about. Let's share the experiences and the kind of things that we have already done, or at least want to do in the farms that we have. Sorry, in the gardens that we have. I keep on talking about the farms because that's what I was actually doing before this. So, um, yeah, we'll just get back to the presentation. So chemicals are not needed by the soil. It needs compost. This is the point, and we stopped there and we went to the practical side of it because this was really important. We think that chemicals help, but when you see this picture, can you see NPK? Now, NPK, this is printed on most of the fertilizers. It means nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So now these three things, if you're looking to build a human being, do you think it needs just a couple of elements like calcium, iron, zinc, and a little bit of phosphorus, and the whole human being is made? It's not possible. So similarly, plants need millions and gazillions amount of nutrients and elements and combinations of those elements to make compounds. So I'll repeat that again. It's really important. Plants need millions and gazillions amount of elements and combinations of those elements to make compounds so that they can make micronutrients available to you in the form of fruits. So now you will ask me, what about those chemical fertilizers that we get? Are they also producing the fruit, even in fact bigger fruits? And I will ask you with another question: are today's children healthy? Are today's children less agitated? Are today's children having lesser diseases? You know, so you are having this same sort of answers. Oh, okay, there's something happening there. That's we are talking about. So the lack of micronutrients is a direct result of organs not developing in the infertile level, and the simple reason is because we use chemical fertilizers with simple notions like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. That's not the amount of things that we need for the plant. The plant needs millions and gazillions amount of nutrients, and that is done by the bacteria and the viruses and the microorganisms and all that. Okay, so we keep on moving now. This is what happens. Obviously, we know farmers did try to get wealthy. They got wealthy. People started copying each other, and then at the end of the day, the soil turned barren and very, very poor, and almost into dust and clay and unpresentable. I mean, nothing can grow into this kind of soils. I hope I'm transmitting the PowerPoint. Yeah. Okay. So let me just get on the same page here. I'm basically actually reviewing the the notes here so that I cannot miss out anything. Just give me a second. Okay, so the next slide is about water. We finished with the air. What we need to do with the air. Now we're going to go to the water. And as I was talking about the water, the microorganisms need the water, and that's how the root systems also get the water if the water supply is not there. And we need to rely on nature for watering the things. Water is a crucial element in the plant's life, but I would also like to say that if you give a lot of water, the plant actually drowns and dies out. So I'll ask you a simple example. Let me just stop sharing here. If you take a small child and if you give it everything that he or she needs, will that child become self-sufficient? Of course, the question is rhetorical. If you give everything to the child will be dependent on you, in fact. And noticeably enough, when we had children in the past, we had maybe 3 to 4 children, maybe five, maybe six. We might be having parents right now who have joined who had a couple of 2 to 3 siblings already. So that means that children in the past were left on their own, natural and growing on their own accord. But today, the child ratio is about 1 or 2 per couple. And what that does is a lot of concentration on the child. I mean, I'm not linking this with gardening, but it's actually also linked with gardening. How? Because of the water. So when we put a lot of water, excess amount of water, and we will never know when to water a plant, so we'll just keep on watering a couple of days later on. अच्छा इसको पानी चाहिए होगा, इसको पानी चाहिए होगा. And what that does is the roots actually develop a shallow depth because the roots are getting the water and they're getting the nutrients, so they'll never go deep. And when the roots are at the shallow level, the sun heats up that area. And so the roots don't understand, should we go deep now? Okay, we need to go deep. But then the water comes on the second day. So the roots don't strive themselves to go into deep matter. So the secret here is to make your land porous enough for the roots to travel deeper and to keep the compost and the water systems on top. And then when the earthworms go down, what happens is when you may have the microorganisms, you keep the layer on top with compost. So the earthworms come up, they eat on the leaves, and then they will bury themselves down in the sunshine because you have not watered it, mind you. And they bury themselves down, and then they defecate down there in the root area.
Can you
So now
repeat it
the
once? I'm sorry.
okay, yeah.
This is the last
So
few lines.
yeah. So when you are watering too much, we'll not talk about the negative part of it, but I'm telling you what you need to do. When you are doing it the right way, you will allow the roots to go deeper. How? Because you're covering the layer, the top layer with compost. Now, when you cover the top layer with compost, microorganisms and earthworms and small insects will come and eat those leaves and they'll bury themselves down in the sun, and when earthworms go down, they will start defecating there. So the water content is going there indirectly, and the defecation, the fertilizer is going there. So the roots are developing deeper and deeper. And how are they going deeper? Because the microorganisms have made the pathways, all the tunnels and all those things that they're making. The ants, as you said, so many ants there making the tunnels there. The roots are going so deeper and deeper. They're finding the water and nutrients there. So you need to water less often, just like nature does it, less often, just like nature does a fog in the morning. Most of the time, that is the enough water for the plants. There's mostly in all most cities, if they're not polluted, I believe there is a fog in the morning. Every time there is a small fog, we see this simply by seeing water droplets on a windshield of a car. So that is the amount of water that actually drops on every sort of leaf, and that leaf just drops it down on the roots, and that kind of moisture is needed. That is just enough moisture for the top layer of the compost to decompose and all the leaves to get decomposed, and then the insects come up and eat that mixture, and they will go deep and bury it down there and put the stuff of organic waste down there. So I'll repeat it again. If your soil is full of compost, you don't need to water it. You need to leave it to microorganisms to do that work. You will also get the less headache of watering it every time. You don't need to remember it all the time. And so you need to trust yourself that you need to water a plant less and just keep on covering the top layer with compost and just water it. Maybe just reduce the quantity of water. Once you start composting on the top layer, reduce amount of water. Every time you do that, just reduce amount of water, and you'll see the roots will actually go deeper for the water. And you'll also see that the nutrients are found there because the earthworms are going down there, because the top layer is now not wet, it's actually dry, and the sun is hitting the top layer, so the earthworms will quickly burrow themselves down. So that's the secret. It's not overwatering, it's actually reducing the amount of water and covering the top area of the surface of the plant where you're growing with compost and dead leaves, basically. So, yeah, I hope I've answered a lot of queries and questions with that, because it's about coexisting. How you bring up your child. If you water it, if you nurture it too much, if you give it everything it wants, the child will never develop a sense of ability to give, because it has received. I'm talking at a philosophical level and at a psychological level. Maybe I'm not qualified for it, but obviously we are victims of children some way or the other who have been over babied. अरे बच्चा रो रहा है, कुछ ना कुछ तो गड़बड़ होगा. you know so we need to at least understand the laws, at least. So if a child is crying after eating, so we will understand maybe it needs to burp. So if a child is crying after eating, maybe a couple of hours later, so it needs to defecate, it needs to change the nappy. So you need to understand the laws, how the things are working, and then you do your action. It's not about just doing the action because you feel like it. So we need to do the actions after knowing the laws. So that's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, Janak. So, two
Yes.
things. One is,
Yes.
will you teach us how to make the compost?
Definitely. This is going to be on the fourth day. I'll
Okay.
just, yeah, composting, bio slurry, and composting are the two subjects that we'll take on Thursday.
Okay. And
Yeah.
secondly, someone has put a message asking you a
Okay.
question. Can you just check the chat, please?
Yeah. Um, I've filled my planters and kundis with fine soil to the brim. Should I change the soil and put dry leaves and plus soil plus granule mixed? I think feeding it with dry leaves on top will take too long for the soil to porous. Okay. Yes. If the plant is already growing there, it's not advisable. But since you have said I have filled my planters, so I'm assuming it's a recent event, and there's no plant growing there, so definitely you can do that just the way I showed it to you. What I did is organic waste, which is green. I mixed it up with soil and I mixed it up with compost already. Microorganisms and bacteria are there already. So that's going to seed. That's going to seed the soil that is there, which is barrel, and that's going to decompose the green waste that is there. So you need three things. You need the normal soil as a filling agent. You need the green waste, that is the leaves or the vegetable peels or all those kind of things. You just need to chop them up really fine. And this I'm talking about it because it's winter. This only do it during winter times. If you do this during the summer times, you will kill the plant. So I'll repeat it again. When you are cutting and chopping the green waste and you're burning it down with the soil, it generates heat. So when it generates heat, the decomposition act creates methane gas and that generates heat. Now, if you do this in the summertime, you're going to actually kill the plant by making a lot of heat. This kind of heat generated touches about 50 to 60 degrees centigrade. You cannot even leave your hand inside for a long time. That's how much heat it generates. So you need to understand. I mean, of course, it's a small pot that doesn't heat too much. But the point I'm trying to make is that in the summer, never use green waste down below. Just leave it on the top. But since this is the winters, you can chop a handful of green peels and green waste, mix it with the soil that is not so productive, and then take a handful of black soil, or humus soil, or soil which is full of microorganisms, in short, compost. And then you mix those three things up, and then you can just plant planters, and that is going to create better produce for you, as I just showed you right now. That's how I'm doing it right now. So, yeah, so since we're in the winter time, you have a couple of months until the winter goes away, so you can still do it today. I mean, there's no problem with doing that. This is obviously going to be shared in the video. You can just slowly pause where I'm talking about the things. But the pointer is, don't do this in the summertime with the green peels chopped inside it. The green peels have to be on top during the summertime, so that the earthworms come on top, eat the green leaves and green peels and green waste, and then when they bury themselves in the heat, they will go down inside and then they release the waste there at that time during the summer. So, yeah. Anybody else have any question? Today's session is a little bit interactive. I think it's appealing to everyone. I hope it is appealing to everyone, because being too
No
bookish.
question, Janak, but
Yes.
one experience only.
Yes.
I experienced this thing then, that when I was watering my plants daily,
Right.
then I certainly saw these plants were dying.
Hmm.
And then somehow somebody, I saw, I think the same, some video,
Right.
over watering, and
Hmm.
then I started watering the plants, every other 2 days after that, and or
Right.
the third day. Then I
Right.
saw they were flourishing.
Right.
So I could relate,
Yeah.
whatever you said,
Yeah.
what was happening actually. Compost I
Yeah.
was making with
Right.
peels and all.
So it boils down to this. Being a facilitator, I'll make it easier for you. Keep a little bit of compost on top, like decomposing materials like leaves and peels, and you need to water it even less. And you'll just see from afar. By the way, if you are watering it less, you know what is happening? You're actually telling the plant that you are going to die soon. You need to fruit very quickly. Now this secret nobody knows. You will think, how is this possible? But this is the truth. This is, I learned from a farmer who was a villager. I said, this a lot of foliage is happening in the peanuts. There's no flowering that is happening. So I said, I'll just not water it for a couple of weeks and the flowers will come. And I said, how is that possible? For the flowers even to come up, you need the water to plant, na? So he said, no, you don't need to water plants. You just come after a week. And he didn't do anything in that farm for a whole week. And suddenly all the peanuts have a small flower there, and the stroke is going inside, and the peanuts have, starting to fill up. And I'm like, wow, how did this happen? And I asked him, but he didn't have an explanation for this. I had to research this on my own. What happens actually is the survival factor that kicks in, that हम लोग मरने वाले हैं, जल्दी जल्दी तैयारी करो, हमारा वंश छोड़ के चले जाए. So the what that happens is the plants actually generate flowers so that they quickly fertilize and they make the seeds because they think they're going to die. So they create the seeds inside there, and then what happens? The farmer starts watering. Once the flowers have come out and the flowers are just about to wither, before the flowers wither, the flowers have come out, right? Then he starts watering the plant. So suddenly, okay, the now the plant gets all the nutrition and root systems going deep again. And since he didn't water it for a day, for a week, the root structures are already going deep, trying to struggle their way through and get the nutrients. So simple balancing acts like this, I mean, of course there's a greed factor coming here, but it's a very beautiful way of understanding nature. But so to get the fruit, actually you need to stop watering it. So that's a secret I'm telling you, and it actually worked. On the whole farm, I could see everywhere flowers happening on the peanuts. And the peanut harvest was actually good that year. So this is how it happens. Yeah.
It's a
Good
very
morning.
valid point what you have
Yeah.
shared, Janak, today, that keep
Yes.
it moisture, keep it,
Yes.
there should be moisture, but it should not be overfeeding of water.
Over what? Yes.
So
Yes.
even I
Yes.
was doing it, so yeah, I'll be
Right.
more
Right.
mindful about it. Thank you for sharing it.
Yes. Yes. It's a similar experience with parenting also, but we'll not go into that chapter. But it's like that when we
In
baby too
fact, the
much.
same thing was coming to my mind. So, like, as we have one kid, two kid these days, and we become
Ah,
helicopter parents, so we
exactly.
become helicopter parents for our plants also,
Uh,
I guess.
I think I'm going to get more blessings from your children indirectly, because somehow this goes into a subconscious mind. If the truths, the basic truths will actually go into a subconscious mind, and then you'll act from that perspective, that point of view. So definitely you will be actually doing a positive thing by just this going into your subconscious mind. Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Good morning, Shefali Didi. We are just midway. We are recording. We'll share with you what we shared, what we
Thank
covered today.
you. Thank you
Yes,
so much. Thank you.
yes. Thank you. So, water and what it does, it's actually a life giver also, but at the same time, it uh, kills and it also recycles. So we need to know understand that. Now this water cycle model, we have been learned on it. We don't need to go into it too much. Just that we need to understand it's a cyclic nature, and we need to preserve the water that comes along our way. So the way I see it is, in fact, I have right now with me rainwater that I'm drinking, and we drink this all year round. And mind you, if I'm not taking it too casually, but this is my medicine, rainwater. So you would say that, oh, there's so many pollutants happening today in this day and age, and smoke is happening, and car is happening. So what happens with that? Well, just take a little bit of calcium carbonate, limestone, and just put it in the water that you've collected in your rainwater, and that neutralizes the acid. But the good part of the rainwater is always there. So the acidic part, if you want to neutralize it, you just get rid of the acidic part by putting some alkaline or base in it, and that will get rid of the acidity part, and that water is good as gold again. So staying natural, the best form of water is actually the rainwater. This extreme image on the left is showing the amount of water that we have actually. If I can just turn on the pointer here, the total amount of water on the earth is locked. 97%, 97.5% is locked in the oceans. Then from that, 2.5% is fresh water, of which 68% of that 2.5% is locked in glaciers. That is on the Arctic and Antarctic and everywhere where the glaciers are. And then
30% is down in the water table, the groundwater that we say when we are digging the water underneath our earth's surface. And permafrost, this is basically the water that is frozen in the middle of the ground. So that's permafrost is locked there. So what we have on the surface atmospheric water is just zero point 0.4 fresh water. 0.4% is fresh water, and of that a lot of it is in lakes. 67% is locked in lakes. So now, if you look at it carefully, a bigger chunk of it is in the soil moisture, atmosphere 9.5%, wetlands 8.5%, rivers 1.6, plants and animals 0.8. So this is where we are actually. We have this is the amount of water that we are taking from the earth's surface. All of us have that amount of percentage taken from 0.4%. So the point I'm trying to make is that everywhere it rains, and it doesn't rain just enough, it rains in abundance. And so we have actually started to collect rainwater. We drink rainwater. It is medicinal properties, almost medicinal properties, at least I would say from personal experience. And the next best water is the water of the rivers. You can see the trees that are on the river banks here growing. These trees will have a lot of nutrients flowing and going through their root systems. So this is the second best water, that is the river water to give to your garden. I'm focusing on the garden also at the same time. And the third best is the lakes. And of course then after that you go to the fourth best, which is the groundwater, and you dig down and all that water that is there. Why is groundwater not so good for plants and gardens? Because groundwater has almost heavy metals dissolved in the water. So like manganese and copper and all this kind of nutrients and heavy metals that get mixed and lynched into the water that is going down. So the water which is at the groundwater, at the water table, it has its own function. You don't need to pump that out. That's the point I'm trying to make. We as agriculturalists or as farmers, as a simple way, a way to get water, we will get it from the bore well, or we'll get it from the well. Simple as that. But that is not the best kind of water, and that water actually makes your trees and plants take up the water, and those heavy metals start residing at the edges of the leaves. So you will see that maybe in your garden you have plants which have brownish edges at the end. So now what is happening is that the plant is trying to get rid of the heavy metals by leaving it at the end of the tips of the plant of the leaves, and then the leaves at the end, they turn the brown. The tips of the leaves turn brown. So you'll understand. Okay, there is something wrong with the water. So the best sort of water is rainwater, and it rains everywhere. So we need to collect this rainwater. How do we collect this rainwater? The simple small child has drawn this. We can do this also. The rooftop converted into a collector. It just puts the water down into a ground water tank, and then you use that as an irrigation system for your plants or gardens, or even for your drinking water. We use it for drinking water. We don't use this water in the gardens because we have the Narmada River. So that is actually river water which flows into our colony. So that's the Gujarat government doing their stuff and doing their play for the farmers in Gujarat. They have this Narmada River diverted and channeled out to various parts of the state of Gujarat, and that river water is used to irrigate the plants and the farms. And then some residential areas also get that river water. So we in the gardens use the river water, and it's as good as rainwater basically. So that's what I'm trying to say. Catch the rainwater that you are getting. It's a blessing in disguise from the skies. We need to catch every drop. I cannot insist more to this. Just fill up the tanks that you have. Make a tank. We have three tanks on top and one tank in the bottom, all collecting almost rainwater that comes. So when the rain first starts coming, we quickly run up. Me and my wife, both of us run up with a wiper in our hand, trying to clear up all the leaves and all these things that have fallen. The dirt is there, and then when the place is cleared up, we start collecting the rainwater from down there. The whole water on top of the terrace gets collected, and it gets stored in the tanks below, and then we pump that up again back into the tanks upstairs. So it's like we have a year's supply of drinking water, and maybe even more for even guests if they come. So this is another
way of feeling abundance, because it's not linked with gardening, but it's very, very important that we collect rainwater. Okay. As we were discussing about the type of soils, I showed you the type of soil that I'm using. I'll just skip this part because the water does not get retained in this kind of sand. This is basically sand, as you can see there. The particle size are big, and because of the particle size being big, there's a lot of gap in between. You can see the white part there. So these are the gaps where the water flows and goes deep. So that plant never gets the water that it needs, and it's just lost because the particles are so big. Then there's silt. Now silt have smaller particles, so the water is actually retained in this place. So you need to concentrate on collecting silt. Clay soil is actually like the water stays on top. Do you see the water cannot flow? If I was a drop of water, I would get stuck here, or I would get stuck here. So you need to be having silt, and this is the next slide that I want to show you. Sandy soil, which is here, and then this is the silt. Now this is the silt without the compost, the normal soil that we see. And then now the black part, this is the one with the compost. Can you see the black color? The similar color was there in our garden also. This is basically decomposing material mixed with millions and trillions of bacteria, and this is the kind of soil that you need. This is the kind of soil that ants love also, because this generates a little bit of amount of heat. So the temperature also varies between these levels of soil. Now sand is very, very dead. In a sense, it doesn't have any living material, so it's dead. And this kind of soil retains the water also. So this kind of soil has a little bit of temperature differences. This soil is warmer, and you can see this next picture. This is the kind of soil that you need to focus on. Mostly dead leaves and twigs and leaves, and yet porous enough for the roots to go in. So this is the kind of soil you want to focus on. And this is the kind of soil that will give you the fruits and vegetables that you are requiring. Nothing else, nothing less than this. It has to be this. Nothing else will give you anything better produce. Um, the carbon atom, of course, has the tendency to be very, very it's like open to combine with a lot of elements, carbon dioxide, and glucose, and all these things have the carbon molecule present there. So it's this part that you see, the part that is twigs and leaves, that is all made of carbon. So you need to have a lot of carbon content in your soil to make food for growth, for growth in your plant systems or in your trees. So if you look at a tree, the basic bark of it, the trunk of the tree is made of carbon. How do we know that? Because when we take that piece of log and we put it into a dehumidifier, or we remove the water from it, it turns into charcoal. Now, charcoal, as we know, is a black color of, the piece of wood that we have, but it's lost all the moisture in it. So basically, it's black in color, and we know it's charcoal. Now, charcoal is 100% carbon. So basically, what is in the air in the form of a gas is converted by the tree to the bark and the leaves, and that is made of carbon. And now that carbon is stored into the leaves and being cycled back and forth to combine with other nutrients and combine with water to make glucose and keep on going that cycle, and then that converts it into a fruit giving tree. But what we do is we collect those leaves, we burn the leaves. We collect the leaves, we burn the leaves. The tree is like, why am I not getting enough fertilizer? When I'm creating so much leaves and I'm leaving it down under my roots, why am I not getting enough fertilizer? The point is, the human being doesn't know what he wants to do with the cyclicity of the nature of things, and he's just clearing the plot, clearing the house, usme jharu laga raha hai, and that's what the problem is. We need to understand that we need to collect the leaves and make it into compost for the tree, so that the tree keeps on cycling that carbon with water, with moisture and sunlight, and then convert it to fruits and vegetables. So this is the kind of soil that we need. I'm going to go a little bit fast again. The soil has to be balanced, as we saw. It has to be balanced of all these three, and then It has to be granular, like grains, small grains. It has to be granular like that, so that the roots can go easy. I mean, if you can just see the soil here, you will know that the root hairs are so fine, they will be able to penetrate this soil easily. So your soil has to be a sort of like small grains. Now the soil pH and water pH, very important. Uh, the pH value is basically the value of the acidity or the base value. For example, if you take a soft drink, it has a acidic value of 1 or 2, you know. So that's how acidic it is, the soda that we drink. And if you take sort of the toilet cleaner or something like that, there's a base value to it. It's not acidic, it's a base value there. It's the opposite of acid, you know. So it has a is a value of 6 or 7. So sorry, it will have a value of 11 to 12. 6 or 7 is the middle. So you need to focus on the 6 or 7 pH of water and soil. This is where the microorganisms flourish. This is where the water gets to the roots and to the foliage easily without harming anything. So if it is too acidic, you will think that, oh, this is a nice plot of land, but then the water supply, if it's acidic, what do we need to do with that to fix that? If, for example, if you have acidity, for example, I have acidity in my stomach, I'm burping, you know, those khatte atkar aa rahe. What do I do? What will I take in to neutralize it? We'll take a milk of magnesia, you know. Basically, we'll take eno. What is that? Antacid, right? So similarly, if you are aware of the pH value of your soil, or if you're aware the pH value of your water, you will understand where you want to keep it at. So 6 and 7 is the optimum. These pH values you can get instruments, small instrument. You can just put it in the soil and understand the pH of the water and the soil. And once you get to know that, if your soil is too acidic, you need to put नीम के पत्ते. नीम के पत्ते क्या होते हैं? उसमें कड़वास होती है. तो कड़वास होती है तो it's a base. So the simple way of understanding is, if it's acidic, वो खट्टा होगा. If it's base, वो कड़वा होगा. So these are the properties, taste wise. I mean, don't put the acid in your mouth. I'm just telling you what happens. So anything which is sour, will be actually acidic, and anything which is bitter will be a base. So now you need something which is in the middle. So in case if you have a soil which is acidic, which is sour, you need to put something to balance that out. You need to put something which is base, which is like, for example, the leaves of the neem tree. So the neem is the best example of a base because uske leaves बहुत कड़वे होते हैं. So it has a lot of opposite of what is an acid. So it has base value. And similarly, if you have base value, for example, if your soil is a little bit more base, like something like 10 or 11, yeah, that's a little bit extreme, but I'm just giving an example. How do you balance that out? तो उसमें आप छाछ डाल दो. छाछ होती है ना, simple buttermilk. So that is, buttermilk is acidic. So what will happen to that soil? That soil will come into the balance. So obviously I'm talking about in the gardening form. You need to be aware of what kind of water you have. Soil, obviously, if it's a small plot of soil that you have, it doesn't matter much. But water, you're watering it every now and then. So you need to know at least the pH of your water. Otherwise, the microorganisms will anyways balance the pH out. I mean, if they want to work, they will balance the pH out. The leaves will balance itself out, because whatever leaves you put on it, it will convert and decompose that way and balance the pH out. But you need to know the pH of your water. If it is too acidic, you need to put bitter leaves in your garden, and if it's too base, you need to put chash with your water. So this is the another very important part, because we keep on watering the plants every day, but we need to know the pH of the water. That's the important part. Any questions before we start with the type of seeds? We have actually reached the end of the time limit. So I think we'll just continue.
Is there
Yeah.
any particular timing? Like some people they say it's better to water the plants in the evening
Yeah.
or in the morning.
Yeah.
That is one thing, and
Right.
like few people they water the plant on the leaves
Right.
than rather than on the roots? Like, is there any significance of watering the leaves? Is it
Okay.
essential, or is it like just for?
Okay, good question. I think when you water it on the leaves, it's more of an aesthetic thing because the plant cannot absorb water from the leaves. It's just an aesthetic कि उसमें dust लग गई तो आप उसमें ऊपर से लगा दो तो sunlight अच्छे से capture होगी so that the sunlight is trapped easily. You're washing it away with the leaves at the top level, so the dust comes down and the leaves look bright and nice and shiny. But if you ask me, there's no purpose of watering on the leaves. There's no particular plants I'm aware of that takes in water from the leaves. They have a stomata, which is a small opening underneath of the leaves, and from there the exchange happens, where it removes where it takes in carbon dioxide and releases oxygen. So that is happening below the leaf, and that is the only thing that happens with the leaves. So no intake of water as such happens, but watering has to be done in the evening times or during the morning times. I'll explain to you why. uh, when it's hot and you are watering the plant like midday for example, and the ground is hot, it has already turned hot, and you're watering the plant, what will happen is that all that heat will go down, and the roots are so fine, like even thinner than our hair, and the water is going down, it's taking the heat with it, and so the systems get a lot of heat. It's like suddenly steaming something, so what happens when you steam something? Well, it just completely dies and it converts to starch and it just decomposes away. So that's the best way of watering the plant is in the evening or in the morning when the sun is not out. But the ultimate way of watering is when you are knowing that thing is like availability. I mean, I will also leave it to availability. If you have water available, just do it. Like for example, you leave it to the microorganisms, they will water the plants for you. You don't need to put it at a time schedule. Just see the leaves. You see that the leaves are a little bit wilting a little bit, especially for the small plants. You water it then, because if you keep on watering at a timetable, what happens is actually the roots will never develop, they'll just be shallow. So it just comes down to this again. But watering it at midday is definitely a wrong thing. So never water it during the midday. The heat goes down and kills all the small micro roots that are down there. So yeah. Any more
Thank you.
questions? Yeah. We'll stop here. I'll share a couple of small videos on the group so that we can get to know what we covered today. And we'll start with types of seeds tomorrow. And we'll try to cover it up with composting and all this ways of making biopesticides also. We'll try to cover that also up. So a lot of things will come up. I will try to make small videos and post in the group itself so that we can save time during the live lectures, because most of it will be practical stuff now on. So yeah, if anybody has any more, if there's no one with have any questions, we can end the session. Not to take up much time beyond 12 p.m. So shall we end the session?